Welcome back in, you guys. We are here today to do the post-game show and talk about 1130 comments. So with that being said, let's hop into it. Alright, so the first comment we have this week says, Luffy is the sun god, Bonnie is the sun god, Road is the sun god, Loki is the sun god, I'm the sun god. Are there any other sun gods I should know about? Classic SpongeBob reference, but yeah, I didn't really think about this beforehand, but we have gotten an influx of sun gods, huh? And the craziest part is that Luffy doesn't even know that he's the sun god necessarily. Like, to Luffy, he's still just a guy who has the Gumu Gumu no Mi. Alright, so this comment says, watch Loki have the Gum Gum fruit. And the reason why it's not in the old Devil Fruit Encyclopedia like Vegapunk stated is because Elbaph's landlocked nature. And because their kingdom had been silent for decades since Dory and Brogy's disappearances. This could be an interesting mirror to Luffy, since Luffy thinks he has the Gum Gum fruit, but is actually the sun god, and Loki would think he is the sun god, but wields the Gumu Gumu no Mi. Yeah, I like this idea a lot. My one hangup, though, is that I feel like Vegapunk might know what this legendary devil fruit actually is, and that's simply because Vegapunk came here shortly after Ohara was burned down. He was one of the special guests that was let onto the island. And because of that, I have a weird feeling that he might know what this is. Maybe he talked to the royal family. I mean, hell, he was let into their library, so I think there's a chance that maybe it's still not the Gumu Gumu no Mi, but I do really like this idea. And there is a small part of me that wishes this is true as well, right? We have Luffy the sun god versus the Gumu Gumu no Mi. It would be this really cool, like, come to Jesus moment is what instantly popped in my mind. Luffy's realizing that he doesn't have the Gumu Gumu no Mi, and then Loki would realize that he's not the sun god, right? They'd both be enlightened in their battle. All right, so this comment says, somebody owes Mr. 3 3.6 billion berries. True, he nailed it back then. Mr. 3 was a menace. He still is. I would argue that Galdino still has a lot of hype behind him. I mean, hey, he's working with the Yonko crew, right? Mr. 3 is still relevant, and I'd be really curious to see what a Mr. 3 interaction with the Giants today would be like, right? Imagine Mr. 3 shows up here at Elbaph. Would Dory and Brogy hold a grudge and want to fight him again? And if so, who would come out on top? Would Mr. 3 still hold a candle in this fight? I feel like he wouldn't. Narratively, it would make no sense if Mr. 3 was still that strong to where he could outmaneuver the Giants. But of course, you know, people like to argue that Mr. 3 did play really dirty. You know, he gave one of the Giants like this explosive barrel to drink. He also made the Giants fight each other a little bit. So Mr. 3 didn't exactly play fair, but I would argue that Mr. 3 is also outnumbered. So, you know, all's fair in love and war. Lola probably felt the evil in Loki and was like, oh, hell nah, my mama's already crazy. And they say, haha, he probably makes Big Mom look tame. And I agree. And we have to remember, I forgot his exact age, but Loki is still really young for a giant. He's in his 60s, I believe. It's either 60s or late 50s, but he's around there. And Loki's already this big, already this crazy. Just imagine Loki when he hits his prime. What would a prime be for a giant? Like 120? 150? So somewhere around there. But yeah, Loki, absolutely insane. As far as Lola goes, though, I don't know. I don't know. Like, for Loki, was he always this maniacal? Or did he only become a villain and the cursed prince after Lola turned him down? I mean, hey, I looked at the statistics. 96% of us are guys. And I just gotta say, sometimes we crash out after a girl rejects us, right? Maybe Lola is what did this to him. Maybe he was a good guy back in the day, but when Lola rejected this guy, that is when he went full-blown psychopath. I think that could be the case, right? Because we can't forget that really stupid silhouette of Loki bending down on one knee with a little flower smiling, right? We didn't see the crazy tongue, you know, we didn't see a frown or like a, you know, angry teeth. No, this guy had a flower. I think Lola holds the one spot in his heart that could tame the beast. All right, so this comment says, Vivi is calling the Straw Hats, let's go. Only the Straw Hats and Elbaph know about the X. I see what you did, Oda. And yep, I completely agree with this. All of the Straw Hats that are reading the newspaper have no idea what the hell is going on with the X. They're assuming it's a part of Luffy's Gear 5th, and they can't confirm nor deny it because Luffy's bouncing up and down whenever he's in Gear 5th. So yeah, I think this is a very deliberate message by Vivi working with Morgans, but as far as Vivi calling out to the Straw Hats, I don't necessarily think that's the case, simply because where would you call them to, right? You know that she's with Big News Morgans, but you can't exactly find the guy, right? He's up in the clouds, he's sailing around, he doesn't exactly have a land-based headquarters. So I think this is more so Vivi telling the Straw Hats that she's okay. You know, she probably knows that the Straw Hats are worried about her, so she sent a message. And now the Straw Hats won't have to go looking for her. They know that she's in good hands and that she can somewhat control her situation if she can put an X on Luffy's arm and spread that across the world. If Loki's Devil Fruit actually has something to do with the sun, Hardin was probably trying to get the Mare no Mi and Dressrosa to overthrow-overpower Loki, since Hardin claimed he wanted to be King of Elbaph. Yes, and he most likely wanted to be recognized as another sun god as well. Right, Hardin would come home and say, hey, the sun god has returned. Because when it comes to the perception of the sun god, a lot of characters seem to have differing stories. Well, I say a lot of characters, but Road is a prime example of this. Because Road's version of a sun god was a guy wearing a deer skull with a sun staff. That right there doesn't look like sun god Nika. It doesn't look like Loki. It doesn't look like somebody who has the Mare no Mi. So maybe all of these giants think the sun god is something different? I don't know. It's really weird to think about. But yeah, I love that Hardin was revealed to be a son of the king. I thought that was awesome. It definitely shines a brand new light on him. Loki's Devil Fruit could be Fenrir. They even have him in chains now, and he wants to destroy the world. And the reply says, or he could have some kind of Ragnarok fruit. Yeah, I think Fenrir would be pretty awesome. I've been banking on Fenrir being an actual Devil Fruit or transformation in the series for quite some time now, so I would love that. My one hangup, though, is that Loki does call himself the sun god. I'm not too familiar with all the iterations of Fenrir out there, but if he is Fenrir, then he's got to be a fiery wolf, right? He's got to have some fire to him for him to call himself the sun god. Like Road, for example. Road, even though he looks nothing like the sun gods we know of up until this point, he did at least have a sun staff, or it was shaped like the sun. So whatever Loki has, I think it needs some sort of sun symbolism or fire abilities to it. And like I said, I'm not too familiar with all the Fenrir lore out there because there is a lot, but maybe there is a fire Fenrir, and that could be what he is. My question is, why did Lola reject Loki? She's literally known for asking people to marry her, so I really wonder why she wouldn't want to marry a prince. Maybe he was too evil for her. And the reply says, yep, I bet on that. Probably too brutal and inhumane. Yeah, that could totally be the case. Like, maybe she could sniff it out from a mile away. You know, we have that picture where Loki plucked a flower and gave it to her. Maybe he killed somebody for that flower, right? We don't know all the circumstances there. Hell, this could even be a race thing, because Loki is still a giant at the end of the day, and Lola's like a 5-foot-tall woman. So maybe she looked up at Loki and was like, yeah, this isn't gonna work, man. Like, I don't know how the hell we're supposed to get together. Loki is an interesting character, and I guess the hot topic today is just whether or not Loki's a good or bad guy. On the main channel, I think I might just hold a poll for that, because I do want to see where people are at. Is Loki a maniac on the surface, but he's actually good inside? Or is this guy just a maniac through and through? I'm kind of torn on it, to be honest, because we do know that once characters meet Luffy, they do change sometimes. So who knows, maybe Luffy will knock some sense into this guy, or maybe the Straw Hats and Loki bond over stories about his failed marriage. Lola. I was hoping for a Logia or Paramecia for Loki, but I think it's safe to say that he is the blood-stained serpent mentioned in Little Garden. And then below, they say Rayquaza would be cool. Yeah, I like Jormungandr. I think that'd be a really cool option for Loki, but I don't believe he is the blood-soaked serpent that was mentioned at Little Garden, because the timeline wouldn't match. Dory and Brogy have been on Little Garden for 100 years plus. Well, actually, it's just 100 years. And Loki is only like 60, 50 years old. So, yeah. It happened while they weren't there. Dory and Brogy did not know about this guy until they got back to Elbaph recently, so I don't believe that he is the blood-stained serpent, even though that is a really cool idea. Actually, after putting further thought into it, I think this would make sense. Dory and Brogy could have been referring to the Devil Fruit specifically, and not Loki. And then once Loki ate it, we have his powers combined with the blood-soaked serpent that Dory and Brogy couldn't even best, which would explain why they need them, plus all the other giants in Elbaph to subdue him. So yeah, I actually think the Rayquaza-Jormungandr theory is looking pretty good. The only thing we'd really have to explain is why Loki considers himself the sun god, even though he is the blood-soaked serpent. I think that's kind of what I always come back to with the Loki theories and what his devil fruit might be. Like, he doesn't need a fruit that specifically ties him to the sun, but I think it would just make the most sense. Elbaph is feeling eerily like the Dark Continent. What if Oda plans on a slightly more serious tone this arc? I would love that. I mean, dude, we are 3 chapters in, technically 4, and so far, we've been kidnapped and drugged by Road. You know, we got put in a Lego kingdom with a bunch of other trespassers, and now we met Loki, who killed his dad for a devil fruit, and he also stated that he wants to destroy the world. I think things are getting pretty damn serious here, which is kind of funny, because it's serious, but at the same time, Luffy has been smiling all the way through. Like, even in the last 2 pages, Luffy's just looking at Loki with a big grin on his face. So I kind of wonder if Luffy will just destroy Loki. Like, yes, Loki is absurdly powerful because he has the Cloud of the Giants behind him, but what if Luffy does little bro him? Like, that has popped up into my mind, right? Usually when there's 2 gods pit against each other, the real one just typically destroys the fake one with ease. So maybe this is going to be a Douglas Bullet situation, where Douglas Bullet is like a monster among monsters, and then Roger shows up and just beats some sense into him, and that's it. Like, maybe that's what Luffy does here. Maybe Luffy frees this guy from his imprisonment, and then Luffy just starts beating him up and says, hey, if Loki goes on a rampage, I'll stop him, right? It could be like the Rob Lucci thing, where Luffy looks at Rob Lucci and he's like, hey, Rob Lucci, you're not gonna go fight my Nakama just because you can't beat me, right? Maybe that's it here, you know? I have a feeling that Luffy would put in the work on Loki. That is my guess. But of course, then again, Luffy is the MC, so I think that's a pretty safe bet in general, right? Typically, if Luffy doesn't win a fight at first, he will win at the very end. Loki's magical abilities include astral projections, shapeshifting, hypnosis, molecular rearrangement, that sounds broken, energy blast, levitating, conjuration, cryokinesis, telekinesis, and teleportation. If he gets a devil fruit that can do any of those, or if he's able to do all of those things, I'm sure he will be pretty broken, yeah. And I'm gonna add in one more. But I do think that Loki has some sort of eye powers. Dude, his eyes are bandaged, right? I think there's a reason why Oda did that. I feel like it could be because, one, he could have crazy eyes. Maybe it's the double layered eyes like Mihawk, Hakuba, and Emu. Or maybe his eyes can hypnotize people. Maybe he looks at people and gives them the 1,000-yard stare and sends them straight to hell. Maybe even his eyes are directly tied to what devil fruit he has. Maybe he has the I know me, or some kind of mythical Zoan that has massive eyes in general. I think that could be it, but of course, maybe we'll just take off the bandages and somebody just cut him like Zoro. Who knows, who knows? Alright, so now for this comment and the last comment, they say, I think the reason for the ice where Joy Boy's hat is because ice prevents rubber from stretching. And yes, I have seen other people comment this as well, and they're like, yeah, this could be another hint that Loki does have the Gamu Gamu no Mi, or a devil fruit that lets him stretch out. And because of that, that is why the Giants decided to lock Loki up where it's snowing, so that he can't exactly use his stretchy powers. But yeah, with that being said though, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. I really freaking appreciate it. Thank you for all the comments in the last video as well. You guys helped me make this video through and through. And I will now catch you guys when the next chapter spoilers release. My name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.